Okay, welcome everyone. Grab your beverage of choice and maybe keep the antacids within reach because we need to talk about the election platform nonsense. I'm Nick, your host.
I'm Rio.
And I'm German.
And yes, it is nonsense. Not because policy doesn't matter, but because apparently nobody got the memo that elections aren't supposed to be a surprise party. Let me tell you why that's bullshit. The Liberals dropped their platform on Easter weekend, the sacred time when Canadians are traditionally reading 65 pages of policy PDFs over chocolate bunnies and awkward brunches with their in-laws. And the Conservatives held out even longer, waiting until Wednesday, April 26th, aka the literal last possible moment to publish theirs. Not a soft launch, not a leak, just surprise, here's our entire vision for the country. Hope you can read fast. Seriously, how are we supposed to engage meaningfully with platforms they clearly didn't want us to read? This isn't a group project, it's a national election. And treating voters like we're the kid you remember after the PowerPoint's already been emailed to the teacher, that's not leadership, that's disrespect. So in this episode, we're going to break it all down. Not just what they're saying, but what they're hiding, who they're blaming, and why some of this reads like fanfic. You're going to hear the vibes and voices straight from the source. We've got conservative promises to lock up criminals and cut red tape like it's 1995, and Jean Chrétien just got a modem. Liberal manifestos about sovereignty and shadows, and bold decorations like if America won't lead, Canada will. Okay, Carney, calm down. We're still using fax machines in some government offices. So let's dive in.
We have some very strong opinions and ideas, and I think we'll probably state those opinions now.
Of gulags. Let's skip ahead to immigration. We kind of already covered taxes, and German and I have talked a lot about housing and affordability. The one thing I will say about housing and affordability, quickly, is because German and I had been talking a lot in the last week about nobody talking about rental income. Well, the Liberals did it in their platform, and they've actually put out a few policies to launch and oversee affordable housing in Canada with caps, which they specifically said they were including for rent, basically rent control, to help with affordability. So we're not going to talk about that again. There'll be links in the descriptions. You can go back and hear our extensive conversations this week. Let's talk immigration, because we haven't actually talked about immigration this week or really during the campaign at all. So quick overview. Basically, the Liberals, their big thing was maintaining current immigration caps until Canada's basically at capacity where we can actually accept newcomers, because they're of the belief that we have to be able to support them, right? In terms of affordability, in terms of housing, the economy, jobs, etc. No surprise here. The Conservatives' big things were high population growth to new housing, healthcare access, and job availability. So that was the same as the Liberals, basically. They want to cap significantly asylum seekers, which the Liberals specifically left out. And then they want to crack down on international student and temporary foreign worker fraud. The reason I bring this up, and I know, hey, maybe your farmer thing won't be an issue anymore because I'm about to go nuclear here, but this is very Trumpian. Like, this part of the document to me was very Trumpian. They talk about temporary foreign worker fraud, cracking down on international students, capping asylum seekers. Where did the stuff in the US start? So again, I'm not saying that Poilievre would go as far as sending people to gulags, but honestly, did any of us in November think that Trump would send people to gulags? Like, we all knew he was a nut job, but I don't think anyone saw that. Even Anthony Scaramucci has been talking on his podcast about how he knew Trump was insane, but never thought that would be a thing that the US government would actually do. So I think with this big red flag, like we really have to look at it and ask ourselves, like, as Mark Carney said, like, where does it stop? We all know where I stand, so I'll throw it to
Yeah,
German first.
yeah, I totally agree with you. And that sounds like you said exactly like Trump's stuff, right? And yeah, like do we really think he'll go towards it? But at the same time, he's playing from the same playbook. I'll keep on saying that. I know people say, "Oh, you're not giving him a chance." Well, we gave Trump a chance, and look what we have now, right?
Well,
But
and is Polyev looking at the US and going, could I get away with that here? With the
and
way the polls are going, I'm thinking not, but
like I don't think he probably can't right now for sure. But if he gives a chance, he'll probably be able to, right? Not to say he won't, right? He's not hiding the fact that people in his party support Trump, right? And people are his Trump supporters around him.
I
So
mean, we've talked about that dynamic before, right? Like he's having this weird trying to balance like appealing to the center and also knowing that he has Trump supporters that are in his party.
yeah, and that's the thing. And like, will he do it? I hope not. But at the same time, who knows at this point? You won't know until you elect the guy. And if
Do
he's
we
given
want that risk?
and if he's given a chance, he probably will do it to some extent. And he's taking similar situations. Like it doesn't sound as Trumpian in terms of like content wise, but it could be interpreted and even enforced in ways that are Trump like. But I've talked too much about this from the last few weeks, right?
I
About
know,
it.
me too. Let's
And
let
so I
Rio
think I
talk.
want to hear Rio to talk because I think Rio would have a different perspective than me, for example.
I mean,
I don't think it's going to be that different knowing Rio.
yeah, because it isn't. Like, I share the same opinion. It's the Trump style playbook of like, well, the border's insecure and all these criminals are coming in. You know, they're killing our fucking children and drugs and fentanyl and whatever, right? So like,
Which is the narrative that Polyev is giving right now. He keeps talking about the fentanyl crisis, which fair, but he has been using it as justification. Like in his in the platform document, he refers the Conservative Party of Canada refers to safe injection sites as, and I quote, drug dens. And it took me reading halfway through the platform to figure out what the fuck they were talking about. And finally it dawned on me, oh, they mean the safe injection site.
and like,
You can't understand, sorry to interrupt, when you can't understand what the hell is going on, that is another problem.
yeah. And like, yeah. But like, and that's where it gets really frustrating for me too. Cause like, as someone, okay, so just like, as someone whose like partner came from another country, then became a citizen, and her whole family came from said country, right? Like, I can't knock immigration. Like, it's a very good thing that has resulted in something very good for me, right? But at the same time, like, hearing Polyev pull this out is just very like, ugh. I'm not worried because it's like, oh, like, yes, more people can't come into the country. I'm worried because it's like, well, if you're already talking about this, like, what's the next, like, what's stopping you from being like, we're going to start revoking PR statuses, or like, we're going to make it harder to become a citizen, or like, you know what, like that citizenship that you got by coming here.
He's already talking in their platform about changing the citizenship oath, which sounds like really mundane, but
that's something
to your point.
Well, and then actually, it's funny you mentioned that too, because when my girlfriend went through her citizenship ceremony, like, I sat there, like, and it was an online ceremony, to be fair. The guy was in Manitoba, and like, it was her and 70 other people. But like, we were sitting there, and then like, hearing her recite the oath was just one of those things where I was like, yeah, you know what? That's very solidly Canadian, right? And like, can I recite the oath to you now? No, I don't know it. But I just remember like hearing it, being like, yeah, that's really important. But like changing it to adding, what was it? That like, I will honor and like serve and da 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 da. Like, that makes it sound like you want me to worship you, or like worship a certain subset of people for the like privilege of citizenship. And it's like, so you're effectively making a second class of citizens just in like a very inadvertent and roundabout way because they came here and not because they were born here. And I say that as someone who was born here, right? So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this. And like, I really can't, I can't be on board with it because it's very like, no, this is something that could absolutely affect like, people I care about, and people I see, once a week, because it's like, well, yeah, we're gonna go visit our family. It's Friday night, gonna, have dinner with them and da 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 da, right? And I'm like, I can't imagine going there and being like, oh yeah, Uncle whoever got deported last week. It's like,
which is a very real thing happening in the US. Like people that voted for Trump are having their spouses deported. And I'm like, you have an immigrant spouse and you voted for Trump.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I found the citizenship thing. They want to add to the oath, I pledge gratitude to those who worked, sacrificed, and gave their lives to defend the freedom I now enjoy and to build the country of Canada I now call home. Like them, I pledge to fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen, which seems mostly fine, except for like the first part's kind of weird. I didn't do a lot of looking into what the citizenship oath looks like because, like I said, I was up until 2 a.m. reading this document. But that first part about like, I pledge gratitude for those who work, sacrifice, like, I just kind of wonder like why and how much different that is than the current one.
I actually just pulled it up. So do you want me to read it out real quick?
Yeah, I want to see the difference.
Please read it.
So the oath of citizenship is a legally binding and oral written contract intended to ensure that new Canadian citizens promise to obey the law and customs of the new country. Its current form is, I swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors, and that I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada, including the Constitution, which recognizes and affirms the Aboriginal treaty rights of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen. So, like,
okay, so that's like a verbal contract, and he wants to. That makes it so much worse.
Yeah, and like the oath itself is already very like, well, I'm going to do my job as a Canadian citizen. Why are you? You're making it sound like mandatory military service is a thing for anyone who becomes a citizen. Like who naturalizes as a citizen, right?
It's interesting you bring it up because actually when I was president of a nonprofit organization, which is one of the oldest nonprofits in the country, actually we got to participate in several citizenship ceremonies. Our club actually was one of our mandates was to encourage Canadians to come to Canada and also kind of promote heritage in Canadian institutions. And so when you look at the way the Conservatives want to bring it up and talk about, like you want to pledge, it's like you said, talking like you're going to the military and going to fight war. Like the one right now is very, very basic. It's bad enough it would be even more complicated if you add the random stuff that sounds like.
And hearing that it's a legal contract gets those red flags up higher for me.
And like legal contracts, you as someone and Rio is studying law, it's going to be some of those situations that are like more focused on like an actual contract of something, which is a bit sketchy.
Yeah, and again, as you guys talk about the military, like where does it stop? So if he does say like, oh, mandatory military for new citizens, like you can't put citizens in different categories. So is there already like a thought process there? I don't know. And maybe that's like very conspiracy theory like, but this is where our politics are now. You have to like over scrutinize every freaking thing that a politician says rather than just rolling your eyes like you did in the 90s and be like, is Bill Clinton really that different than Bush? Was Obama, who like blew up a couple hospitals with drones, that much different than Bush? Not really. This is like a whole new level.
And do we want conscription even for citizens too?
No.
Yeah.
Like that's another thing he could have done too, right? And like honestly, like do I want mandatory war and fighting? I don't know. Like I said, I don't mind joining the military on my own accord, but to be forced into it is another problem and another story, right?
Especially now.
Yes, especially fighting overseas like Ukraine and Russia. Like I would tell people, like when you go to war,
our grandparents are all like rolling over in their graves right now.
Like you go to like when you fight war, you can't tell the difference between who is the enemy and who is your friend, right? So you'll be killing your friend down the road. I don't want to go through that right now.
Well, that was a lot darker than I thought it was going to be. So we're going to move along to the closing. And